Hello, my name is Daniel, and this is my project, California's Crop Irrigation and Climate Change, Details from Vineyard Water Management. In this presentation, we'll be going over the introduction, data, results, and conclusions, and let's get started with the background. So, climate change has been shaping the global agricultural industry for the last few decades, and water scarcity has followed. As temperatures increase, as shown on the right, water scarcity has increased, and this scarcity is predicted to rise 5 to 8% in the next 50 years. And California, a key agricultural state, as seen on the right here, it controls about 90% of wine/vineyard production in the US. It is particularly vulnerable to these climate changes, and especially the water dependent crops like vineyards. So, my question is, how do climate trends influence agricultural water usage for climate dependent crops in California by volume? So, for this project, I had two main data sets. The first one is California Agricultural Water Use Data by DWR, or Department of Water Resources. It showed me how much water was used in each hydrological region by crop. And the second data set that I used was California weather data from University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources. And it had variables like precipitation, air temperatures, wind temperatures, soil temperatures, evapotranspiration rate, which is how much water evaporates, and solar radiation. And these data were collected by CME stations all across California. And every single day, they will collect the data that we need. And this allowed for a more comprehensive analysis of data of the weather. And so, what do we get from comparing these two data sets? Well, here's a comparison of the water usage across the year for each crop. You can see a general upward trend for most crops, with a few exceptions, but we will talk about why that is later. So, first of all, here's a correlation map between the applied water or water usage and some weather variables. Something we could see here, first of all, is that precipitation had a strong negative correlation to precipitation. And here we can see a strong positive correlation with air temperature maximum, solar radiation, and evapotranspiration rate. And for the correlation heat map for evapotranspiration, which is how much water gets evaporated, and weather variables, is mostly the same story. Negative correlation with precipitation and positive for air temperature maximum, solar radiation, and ATO. And something to note here is that some crops had higher correlation, such as grain, tomato, olive, and garlic, which usually use traditional irrigation styles. But some have lower correlations, like dry beans, tomatoes, and potatoes. And these are crops that use drip irrigation, which basically inject water directly into the soil. And something to note is that droughts have significantly affected these water usage rates. Some droughts that were significant were in 2006, 2011, 2016, 2020. And more specifically for vineyards, on the right here, you can see that especially in 2011, there was a huge jump in water usage for vineyards. And this shows us that vineyards are really sensitive to these kinds of changes in the climate. And so, what does this tell us about climate change? Well, we have a few variables that affect climate change. Temperature and evapotranspiration is especially drives the irrigation demand and the demand of water that has been growing. And some other factors as well, such as solar radiation, minimum soil temperatures, and precipitation. And because of these reasons, we have a few recommendations for adaptation. First of all, we need to implement drip irrigation for all types of crops for a lot of different regions. Some less developed regions in agriculture don't have drip irrigation, which has been shown to lower water usage for all crops and lower its correlation with the climate. So implementing this as quickly as possible is important. And we need to also leverage natural precipitation. We have seen that natural precipitation lowers the amount of water that we need to use. And so using this better way, preserving the water from rain is important. And finally, we need to focus in on lower developed areas in order to, again, implement drip irrigation and other technologies faster in order to foster vineyard concentrations and growth all across California. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you for watching.